struggling to move your nonprofit forward? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Nonprofit Architect, where we are giving you the actionable steps you need to launch and grow your nonprofit organization. Now, here's your host, Travis Johnson.
Travis Johnson here today with Karley Cunningham. We're going to dive into the 11 fundamental underpinnings required for success. And Karley does a great job with this at the Big Bold Brand. But before we get into that, shoot me an email at nonprofitarchitect@gmail.com if you want to get in on the Nonprofit Alliance. Get in this mastermind group that talks with other nonprofit leaders, other consultants, other branding experts on how to do things better. Don't do this thing alone by yourself, frustrated, you're not making money, you're tired, you're worn out. Get in the Nonprofit Architect Alliance and start growing today. Karley, how the heck are you?
I'm great. I would like to say it's a sunny day here in Vancouver, but it's Mother Nature's kind of fulfilling the stereotype this morning. It's a little cloudy, but life is good in the mountains.
That happens. And it's a couple hour time difference here, and I got up and had a nice, clear, sunny day as I did my 14-mile bike ride down by the river this morning. I got to see the sunrise, which is so cool. Come back, get all amped up to have my conversation with Karley today because you've got so much energy. I can't just come in here lethargic. I have to get up and get ready. But tell us about the Big Bold Brand and what it is that you do.
Awesome. Thanks for asking. So what we do is we work with leaders of organizations to get them clear on who they are, what they do, who they work with. In this case of nonprofits is who is contributing to their organization, whether that be time or funds or energy. And we help them figure out how they're unique compared to those they might be competing with for dollars. And we help them get them clear on their story. And as you know, we're going to dive into those 11 fundamental elements of success for any organization and how when you put them all together, you can put together a surefire strategy to drive acceleration and success.
Yeah, we've had branding experts on before, but Karley takes it the extra mile and ensures that all of these things are in alignment, from marketing, messaging, and making sure that your employees, staff, volunteers are all operating on the same sheet of music. So you're functioning as a well-oiled engine instead of just being busy. Busy does not necessarily equal moving forward. It doesn't equal building momentum. It doesn't equal dollars in the bank account. It just means that you're working really hard at something, but not necessarily moving the needle forward. And we're going to get that in alignment today. We're going to go through these 11 steps, which isn't going to take all day, right? So if you're listening to this, you're like, man, 11 points, that's too much. Don't worry. If you go to BigBoldBrand.com/nonprofitarchitect, you're going to get this surefire audit tool that's going to run through these for you so you don't have to be furiously taking notes as you're driving back and forth to work or whatever you happen to be doing today. Well, let's just go ahead and jump right on in to these 11 steps. Karley, take it away.
Brilliant. One of the things I want to touch on before we go to the 11 steps, and you're like, no, wait a minute, I want to go to the 11 steps. But you said something really important, Travis, and that was alignment. If you're not aligned, and let's use an analogy. Think about your spine. It was funny, Travis and I, before we jumped right on the call, we were talking about, ready to go. And if you turn your head and all of a sudden your neck goes out or your back goes out, think about what happens when your back is out. Think about how you feel. Lethargic, in pain. You don't necessarily have the energy or ability to move forward. Sometimes by a step, if you're like me and throw your lower back out, you're like, oh, this is going to be a problem. Now, think about when your back is in alignment and you're feeling great. When everything is in alignment, you have more energy, you're not stressing over the things that aren't aligned, and you have a lot more clarity. You just overall, you feel great. You have that ability to create momentum and move forward. And so when we look at this, we're looking at not only these 11 elements being in alignment with each other, but we're also looking at taking your team and bringing them into alignment. So instead of two of your departments, say, working in different silos, they're actually working in the same, under the same strategy, using the same tools. And so everybody, for lack of a better analogy than the one everybody knows, you put everybody in the rowboat, you get them all rowing at the same pace in the same direction, magic happens. So let's dive into those 11 elements. Let's start with the foundation of it. We split them into 2 different groups. One is what we call the U elements. The other, which is the second set that we focus on, are the your positioning elements. Now, why do we start with the U elements? Well, effectively, if we go back to the origins of a nonprofit, it's starting with someone or a core group of people who have a core belief and a vision. And we're developing this on a belief, a common purpose. So what is the purpose for us existing? When you can get super, super clear on that, then we've got the foundation, a great formation that we can build on. And that really relates back to those founders. Then on top of that, we look at, well, what do we believe and what are our values? We call them guiding principles. So whether it's one leader bringing their set of values to the organization, or whether it be a group of leaders bringing a common agreed upon set of values, aka guiding principles, then they can hold each other accountable to those values and guiding principles.
I think it's important to talk about that. We were just discussing before we hopped on here about a post on my personal page, facebook.com/nonprofit architect. And I asked the question, the hardest thing about running a nonprofit is, and right from the get-go, we had a former guest, Danny Katona, hop on and say, balancing founder vision with team input.
That one really stood out to me. That was actually a big red flag for me. For me, your purpose and your guiding principles, and even that long-term vision, if you want to put it in the terms of good to great, your big, hairy, audacious goal. We're going to end world hunger, or we're going to end child poverty in a certain segment of the population. Those are set it and forget it for a long period of time. Those are the foundation of your organization. I mean, how often do you go and rip up the foundation of your home? No, you build it and you live on it. And in some cases, if we look at a country like America, you're living on that foundation for 100 plus years. So if you have that foundation, then ultimately that is what's guiding everybody forward. If we're talking team inputs, the team inputs, and you alluded to it earlier, was on the tactical level. Do you want to, I loved your analogy of that. Do you want to dive back into that?
Yeah. So in the military, we have these different levels of warfare. And obviously we're not talking about warfare in the nonprofit world. We have this tactical level, which is boots on the ground, sailors on ships, Marines landing on shore. And you've got this operational level, which is more like, how are we going to employ this capability or this system to help achieve our objectives? And then you have the strategic level, which think, the president, the secretary of defense, the joint chiefs, like what their actual vision is. And people, if they're interested in this, it's a little off topic, you can go search what the strategic plan is for the U.S. from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And you have that big overarching vision, which might be what the founder does. And if you dissect it to something more digestible for our non-military listeners, if you are for the city planner's office and you're trying to develop a community, that might be the strategic level. What's the output of this community? What are we hoping to get out of this? And then more of the operational level, you have, well, let's lay out this neighborhood. What do we want this neighborhood to look like? And then more at the tactical level is what each individual house is. Unless you have those levels of planning, those levels of organization, you're going to have a hard time moving forward with this, because the founder's vision, by and large, is going to be up at the strategic level, and he might have some vision of what the operational level might look like, but he's going to need team input to really get that tactical level, that program level, like how are we actually delivering services to impact our cause, our mission, our focus, and not having a tactical idea that's not in alignment with that operational or strategic level. That's where you end up creating a lot of problems and shifting your foundation. And once your foundation is shifted, the whole thing is coming down. You have to have that solid foundation on which to build upon. And so many startup nonprofits find themselves at the tactical level just wanting to push a program when they don't have the foundation laid out through a strategic plan or an operational vision. They just know, I want to do this. I want to take veterans out hunting. Great. How is your board raising money? Do you have enough funds to do that? Are you paying yourself? Are you keeping the lights on? Do you have the bills going? Like, At what point are you providing training to your nonprofit? Training? What do you mean training? We don't got to train. I know how to do big hunts. That's great. That's the tactical level. You can deliver that program, but how long is your nonprofit going to be sustainable without that operational level, without that strategic picture, vision, and plan?
Well, and to run with that, taking them out to hunt, well, how is that fulfilling your purpose? Oh, it's reteaching them life skills and confidence and forming a sense of camaraderie and a sense of community for those who have fallen out of that. And you can do that in many different ways. I have a friend who runs the ITI, which is the Iditarod Challenge, the human-powered race in Alaska. And what he's setting out to do with that race and the organization on their nonprofit side long-term will be around doing just that for folks, is setting them up to succeed. Folks who have lost their identity, whether it be veterans or people who have been through trauma, is they want to have a nonprofit division that focuses on helping them be the best people they can, helping them understand what they're truly capable of after they've gone through, whether it be trauma, whether it be losing identity because they're no longer a part of the military, whatever that is that's leading to them becoming stuck in their life. So we're always coming back to measuring, are the tactics in alignment with our purpose? And the way in which we're delivering them, are they in alignment with our guiding principles?
Mm-hmm. So my friend, Stephen Kuhn, who his podcast should have been live before this one comes out, he talks about if you were clear on your mission, vision, purpose, and your why, if you're clear on that, the how doesn't matter. You know that what you're working to, you know where you're going to get towards. And so often we get bogged down in the how. It's really easy to get bogged down into the how, which program, how are we going to employ it, how are we going to fund it. It's easy to get bogged down there if you don't have the clear mission, vision, strategic plan. Once you have those in place, those should be in place, foot stomper, remember this, those should be in place before you're delivering programs. If you're putting the cart before the horse, you're going to find out that a horse really isn't designed to push things. They're designed to pull. And you're going to have whatever's in that cart all over your path and your way, and you're going to have a big old mess. Making sure these are in alignment is priority number one to get you into the right focus and mindset for what you're doing.
And then to round out the U elements is your 3 to 5 year vision and defining the personality of the organization. Now, let's go back to 3 to 5 year vision for a minute. Most people are like, oh, wait, but we get told to develop a long-term vision or a 10-year vision. The reason that we focus on the 3 to 5 year vision is because your brain, neuroscience says that your brain can actually wrap itself around that time frame. It feels real. And when it feels real, it's like, oh, wow, we should probably get on that because 3 years is really only 36 months. And if it's going to take us 12 months to do step 1, wow, we better get moving, right? Once you get out into the 7-10 year, it's like, oh yeah, we have this 10-year vision and you can talk about it. And then all of a sudden somebody goes, we're 7 years into that 10-year vision. We have a bit of a problem. And so we work back to a 3 to 5 year vision because it's real. People get it. There's some sense of urgency to it, as well as you can build a strategic plan around it. Like, try building a strat plan for 10 years. You'll glaze over by page 3, right?
Not only that, but the technology and how we interact as a society is changing rapidly. I know I've been mentioning COVID in each of the last, 10 episodes, but it greatly changed the way that we look and interact with things. People that required in-person interviews are now finding that they're easy to do on Zoom. They're easier to make. They're more likely to be followed through on. It's easy to change those plans. So people that had the dream of this big New York firm and working for them, they don't have to actually live in New York in order to work for the company and deliver services. They can have the New York paycheck and the Wichita, Kansas budget and lifestyle, and they're living like kings in the Midwest with that paycheck. Changing the way that we're delivering service and conducting interviews and functioning as a society in this. We're on Zoom here, and I've done Zoom for every interview that I've done. It's fantastic. As a startup, I would never have the funds really to fly out and meet Karley in Vancouver in order to do this interview. And she may or may not take the time with a startup nonprofit architect like myself to fly to Oklahoma to do this thing in person. But here we are using this technology as something different, a different way to connect and do business You can't do a 10-year plan. You do a 10-year plan, you spend all this time putting it together, you put it on the shelf, and then it gets dusty until it comes time to update the 10-year plan. And you realize you haven't read it in, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months.
And I mean, if you think things are moving quickly now with technology, wait till AI really takes hold. The information that's the big data, and then AI is going to be able to leverage, like our minds are going to be blown in probably less than 2 years.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit. You kind of mentioned personality for the U elements, the YOU elements. What do you mean by personality of an organization?
So with personality, how I describe it is imagine that you're throwing a gala, because that's the easiest one to pick on for a nonprofit. You're going to throw a gala because it's going to raise the most amount of money for us in the whole course of the year. And you're going to take the organization and actually dress it in a tuxedo and send it into the room. It is its own entity. One of the reasons, it's a side note, but one of the reasons I like to do that exercise is because often the founders, especially as a startup nonprofit, they feel like it is them. They feel that they are the nonprofit. That's a lot of weight to carry for the founder or founders or leadership team. They're like, man, like this is my whole life. And they just can't form a separate identity to it. I like to set that right from the start. So we're going to package it. It is its own entity, its own being, and you're going to send it into a room. How's it going to show up? What's it going to be like? What's its persona? What's its tone of voice? How is it going to be received by the people that it's meeting? And the reason we developed that, do you get it?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to take what we're saying and apply it to something I know. And right off the bat, a company that jumped out at me is Chick-fil-A. I know that if I go to Chick-fil-A, even if it's busy at lunch, even if there's cars wrapped around the building, I know that I'm going to get a quality product, right? A quality chicken sandwich. I know that drive-through line is, I don't know, hitting light speed so fast they've gone plaid. I don't know how they do that. But I know that when I say thank you at the end, they're going to say my pleasure. And the culture of that organization, the personality, that the values that they embody, I'm going to get the same Chick-fil-A experience no matter where I work. Wherever I eat, I can be anywhere in the country and get that same experience. Their personality is quick, professional, and polite, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, another great example of personality and how a company rolled it right into their advertising. If you think back to the Mac versus PC campaign.
I love those commercials.
Right? Even just the way they were dressed. You got who Mac was. You got who PC was. And Mac got to, obviously Apple was going to lean it in their favor, but they got to hang out with all the cool kids. And there's like PC going, well, I can do this over here. And Mac's like, oh, we have this camera. Have you met her yet? She's fantastic. So that is the ultimate personification of developing your personality. And the reason we developed that tool is because, quite simply, all your writers are going to want to know, well, what's the tone of voice? How do we present you and maintain a consistent tone of voice throughout your communications? Your team is going to want to know, well, how are we supposed to show up and represent the organization? Think about a new team member showing up and they're like, oh, wow, Sally just called in sick and I have to go fill their place at this event. I've only been here 2 days. Like, how am I supposed to show up? When you can give them documented elements, and in this case, it would be great to give them your purpose or your why, your guiding principles, and your 3 to 5 year vision, and how you need them to show up. Those 4 U elements are going to set that new employee up to step into any room and talk about your organization. Oh, absolutely. And if there's nonprofits out there right now thinking like, man, I haven't done all this stuff, again, you can go to BigBoldBrand.com/nonprofit architect and follow along with the Surefire Elements evaluation and see what exactly they're talking about, how they're broken down, and how you can implement these things. It may sound like a lot to listen to on a quick podcast, but once you break it down into edible little chunks, you can eat this whole thing, bite by bite. It's not that big a deal. Yeah. So those are the U elements. Right? Those are the U elements. And now we're moving into the strategic positioning elements. People tend to do brand backwards. So the first thing a startup will do is come to us and say, we need it. aside of a good name, yes, absolutely. But we need a logo and visual brand identity. Like we need our colors and our fonts and all those things. And I'm like, okay, whoa, hold on a minute. How can you make any decision on those unless you have a decision-making set of filters? So those being the U elements plus, well, who is our audience? What are our volunteers like? Why do they volunteer for us? What motivates our donors? Who are they? What problems do we solve for them? AKA, how do we make them feel like the hero, right? And so in that, people then, the other thing that they'll start with first is their positioning elements, because they're like, oh, we need to know who our donors are. We need to understand them, and we need to understand who we need to be for them. No. You need to understand who you are, what you believe in, how you're going to show up in the world to attract the people who believe what you believe. And those are your target audiences. So that's the first step in the positioning elements, is getting clear on your ideal target audience profiles. Not your mediocre, not the general wide swath. Who are your ideals? Because they're a lot easier to track down and chase when you know exactly who you're serving or who aligns with what you believe. So then beyond that, then we get into, well, what do we do? And that's where we come back to those programs. What programs do we offer? What events do we throw? How do we raise the funds? From there, we go to, well, what are the benefits and differentiators of your organization? So if I give my $500 to your organization, what are the benefits of that? Why are you different than this other organization who sounds really similar to you? Where are my dollars going to fulfill those wants and needs that I want fulfilled as a donor, right? I want to feed the hungry, but really I want to feed hungry kids because they're the ones that I really believe are underserved. Or I want to feed the veterans because I understand their situation.
I want to jump in right there real quick, talking about who you serving in your ideal target audience. There's different target audiences. Your clients, your customers, your donors. This could be strategic partners, staff, investors, sponsors, the people you're delivering services to. Veteran nonprofits, I need you to hear this. Stop only asking veterans for money. Those are the people you're trying to serve. Mm-hmm. Those are the people you're trying to deliver services to. There are so many other groups of people that care about them. And yes, some veterans are going to chip in along the way. But if you're only marketing and asking for money from the veteran community, you're doing it wrong. You wouldn't ask the homeless population you're trying to serve for money to help feed other homeless. That sounds ludicrous. You're not asking children that need lunch to help fund other children that need lunch. Stop asking veterans, please, please, please. Stop asking them directly to help their own community and just them. You can ask them part of the time, but the larger picture should be asking people that care about helping veterans and not just veterans. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can have the podium back. Sorry.
No, that's a mic drop point. It's absolutely a mic drop point. Don't ask the children who don't have food to go find money for food. So benefits and differentiators are a key component of helping us figure out what our unique value proposition is. And notice that there's 3 words in that: unique value proposition. So effectively, it's saying, what is the unique to us as our organization value that we provide that audience? Proposition, yeah, that's just an extra word on the end of it. Everybody, you can all go look up what proposition is if you don't know that. But really, it's like, what are you going to proposition me with, right? So let's go with, well, let's go through those audiences and why we have different value props. So when we say unique, each organization has unique DNA. And that DNA is made up of all the elements that we've talked about up until now. They're going to do it differently. Different founders have different beliefs and values. Different founders have a different vision for how we're going to spend the next 3 to 5 years. Great. Those elements start to weave in. But value is the key thing. So as a volunteer, we haven't talked about that group yet. So if I volunteer, again, Organization A, Organization B, both working in ending hunger, what is the value if I choose to go work for the organization who focuses on children versus the organization who focuses on veterans? Well, the value for me might simply be because my heart really goes out to the children.
Mm-hmm.
The value could be that I get something else or different or more by serving the veterans. The value might be that I actually get to be on ground as a volunteer and not in the back office, and I get to see people smile. I get to contribute on the days that we take them out on the adventure to being a part of that. Mm-hmm. That may be more valuable to me than sitting in a back office putting stamps on envelopes at the other charity.
Going back to that question I asked yesterday, which is now going to be weeks ago, what are you struggling? Your biggest struggle with a nonprofit is fill in the blank, and people are putting in volunteers, management, volunteer engagement, volunteer showing up and willing to do some of the work. And not everything you're asked to do is going to, be fun and make your heart swell with passion. Some of the things are going to be like trash needs to be picked up. These envelopes have to be stuffed and delivered to all these different seats. It might be a million different things, but making sure that your volunteers are appreciated, and not just appreciated the way that you want them to be appreciated, but appreciated how they would like to be appreciated. And I got asked by a client this week, well, how do I do that? I was like, well, you just ask them how they would like to be appreciated. Some people would not like nothing more than a Starbucks or some other coffee company gift card. That would just make their day. Some would like a free meal. Some would like a letter from the founder or a video clip from the founder. Some would like to be present when services are being delivered. That's going to fill them up. But you don't know until you ask them, say, hey, how can we best show you some love and appreciation? How can we best support you? And when you get those answers, and then you have to execute on the things that they said that they wanted, knowing the best way to support them is only half the battle. The other half is actually taking that action and following through.
So what you're effectively saying is know your target audiences. And when we work with our clients, it's a deep knowing and understanding. And notice when you download the tool, target audience profiles comes before developing your value propositions. If you don't yeah, right? My job. If you don't understand who your volunteers are, what they want when they come to you, and what they need when they come to you, those are two very different nuanced things. But want says, I want to volunteer. Need says, well, I really want it to make me happy. I want it to fill my day and make me smile and make me feel good after I walk away. They're not going to say, I'm coming to make myself feel good. They're going to say, I'm coming to volunteer, right? Mm-hmm. The key thing about your ideal target audience profiles is asking yourself the questions, what are the problems that we solve for this audience? Now, that's a little obscure or ambiguous for a nonprofit, and I'm going to call it before you call me on it, because I know you will. But if you think about volunteers, what are the problems? And you touched on it, and what do they want? I need a letter. I want a letter. I need a letter because I'm a college student or a university student applying for my master's or the next level, and I need to show that I've volunteered. So they just might want the hours. They might want to feel good. So their problem is, I've got time to give. I don't feel like I'm giving back enough. I want to find that thing that I can give back to.
Yeah. Some people want to find a place that's going to, give them some appreciation, some fulfillment. Some might be there because they have court-ordered, mandated community service. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Maybe you can take those people that wouldn't have normally found you and bring them into your organizational identity and organizational personality and help provide a little spark in them too. Because it's not just the people you're delivering services to that you want to get excited about what you're doing. You want your volunteers and your staff and your donors to get that little extra spark, that little extra, you know what? I really like this person, company, organization, whatever the thing is. And all that leads to helping you really decide what your stealing your thunder, your brand promise is. Now, if you listen to the show and you've listened to it for some time, I've had the same intro for every episode. We're going to give you the actionable steps to help you build a stronger nonprofit. And just about every show, I deliver on those, in this case, 11 fundamental underpinnings of success. We're giving you the actionable steps, the things that you need to do in order to be successful.
Interesting. I can pick at that for a minute. Can you read that one more time?
My promise?
Yeah.
To give you the actionable steps to help grow or help build a stronger nonprofit.
I am going to refute that. I know.
On my show? Oh no!
It is an absolutely brilliant guarantee. Promise, in the way that we look at it, is the promise of experience, which spans the whole organization. So let's say nonprofit architect grows immensely over the next 18 months.
Perfect. I'm in. Sign me up.
So if this is a strategic organizational tool, which is what all of these are, how does that promise serve your future staff members?
Ooh.
So promise is the promise of experience. So we could take the backside of that. I'm just going to riff off of it. So I've got myself on the spot. Well done, Karley. I'm going to put myself in the hot seat here. But if your promise is building stronger, more confident, more strategic leaders, we riff off that building stronger nonprofits. If your promise becomes about building stronger, more confident leaders, then that's appealing to team members. Now, why do I pull away from that guarantee? This really goes back to a bigger level of brand and trying to avoid building the silos in the organization. And I'm going to pick on our HR brand versus our marketing brand. Our marketing brand says that our guaranteed promise is we're going to provide actionable items to make stronger nonprofits. Brilliant. Problem is, it doesn't mean anything to HR. So HR goes, oh, okay, our promise is that we're going to be the best organization to work for. That's just a really easy, low-hanging fruit to run with. But now you've got two different departments in a large organization building two different brands. You've got an internal brand and an external brand. Congratulations, you're now bipolar, or you're spending twice the amount of money. All right? So if we move promise to the experience of any time that I interact with Travis, I'm going to walk away lit up and feeling more confident and more educated, which is an experience I've gotten for you in our few interactions. Then you know that you can deliver every single time, no matter who you touch. And then everybody in every department, every leader is going, are we delivering on our brand promise? Guess what? Then they're all aligned, as opposed to HR is over here trying to fulfill this promise and marketing and sales are over here trying to fulfill that promise. And we're like, oh, no wonder people are working in silos because they're working to different things.
So you're saying that every facet of an organization, if I hear you right, should be working towards the same mission, goal, and vision and promise?
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to this right now and you didn't feel like you got hit with a bat to the side of the head, I don't think you were hearing that right. Everybody should be playing on the same sheet of music. If you look at an orchestra, the conductor gets a lot of credit for taking all these different sections, ensuring that they're the right experience level, the right proficiency, and moving them together and creating this feeling, this energy as they move through the piece, as they build on this movement. And they're all reading from the same sheet of music. Now, if you are, talk about in the home here, and you got a husband and wife, and you are on the same point, looking in the same direction, working with the same energy, you can continue along that straight and narrow focus for a long time. But if you were even to depart just a little bit, well, I'm more of a spinner and he's more of a saver, and we just kind of and don't really solidify that point, even though your gap may be small over time, that's going to cause a chasm between you as a couple. You have to be on the same sheet of music, go in the same direction at the same tempo, the same rhythm, and building with the same energy the whole way in order for the piece to sound good.
Mm-hmm. Now, amplify that and complicate that with board members or even partnership leaders, like leaders in partnership. My second business, which was a partnership, dissolved because we weren't values aligned. And it just kept causing tension to the point that we were like, I can't do this anymore. Like, you're a good person. You have great goals. We believe the same thing, but we're misaligned when it comes to values, which means we operate and show up differently in the world, which is why we're driving each other crazy. So if you've got 6 board members who all believe that our purpose is to do X, but they're all operating differently because one feels that 100% integrity is important, and the other one's like, well, let's go with the 80-20, right? I'm picking on integrity because everybody says, our values integrity. That's a whole other show and episode. Maybe we'll work on that one. Integrity is actually not a value. It's an output. But for the sake of the conversation,
We're allowed to record more than one episode. We can bring you back here, record, and talk about whatever you like.
Sweet.
See if you can dissect my organization more.
Yeah. Do I need to apologize for that?
I don't know why you would. I don't feel offended. I'm not sad on the inside. The military stripped all my feelings out years ago. Now there's only one, and that's rage. Furious rage is all I feel. I can't even keep a straight face.
I've never gotten rage from you. You smile too much.
Well, I've got such great teeth that I've been working on, making them all pretty.
Thank you, the military.
So we got off the road a little bit and a couple of side topics. We were talking about brand promise. I think we're all on the same page with brand promise. What's after brand promise?
Brand story.
Brand story. What the heck is a brand story?
Well, what it is, let's start with what it's not. It is not the history of your organization.
You mean my website just shouldn't be a pamphlet, a digital pamphlet?
That shows a timeline of, hey, this is where we started in 1922, and I'm going to make you read every 5 years from now until then. No. It is not a description of what you do. It is actually the story that connects you to your audiences. It attaches or addresses or resonates with the emotions of the people that you serve. Often, and I know you've done an interview, it makes your client the hero. Mm-hmm. So you have some choices here as a nonprofit. Is it how you're making your donor the hero? Is it how you're making the people you serve the hero? In my friend's case at the ITI, the Iditarod Challenge, I should actually get the name of that right, the Iditarod Invitational. Future forward, when he works with those folks that he's rebuilding in his nonprofit, the goal is that they will be creating stronger humans, creating more confident people, and sending them back in the world to do more good, to step into leadership roles, to be more able to contribute to their communities and society because they've gotten unstuck. That's a pretty good story, don't you think?
I think so. It's a way to share the vision and the impact of what your core mission is. Mm-hmm. I've got a good friend, Major Ippolito, Senior VP at Folds of Honor, which does a great job doing events and fundraising. And their partnerships, if you haven't looked into them, are amazing. They've got stuff with Coke, Budweiser, PGA, I'm sure a bunch of others I don't even know about. But they bring you into the story. They provide scholarships for the families of the fallen. And I'm sure I don't have their mission 100% right. But they don't come out and say we just give scholarships to families who lost a service member. They don't just say that. They walk you through the story of the heartbreak, the rebuilding, that what you're actually donating to is building a future for a family that's been completely devastated by defense of this nation and what that means and how it impacts them. And you get a much more rich, much more developed story that draws the audience, the target audience, and that's going to end up, opening their pocketbooks and their purses to help create this vision that they're talking about. And you don't get that by putting your history on a website. No one really cares about the history of your organization. Not really. They care about the why, their impact, and how they can get on board with whatever you're needing.
Here's one way you can leverage a great brand story. And what I loved is you said, we're going to tell them the overarching story of how we help create that transition, that change, that impact for all of these families. That same story arc can then be used on a micro version of, we're going to tell you the story of Jessica's family's journey through this, and write a mini brand story, which actually becomes a case story that follows the same arc. They lost a family member. They said that they came to us and said they needed this help. This is how we helped them. Boom. And here was the impact of that. So a good brand story can actually create a template for the mini stories or case stories, because people are always going to come back to you and say, okay, I'm in. Like, you had me at your purpose. I see that you're making an impact. Well, actually, sorry, what I meant to say is, we don't see that you're making an impact yet. Send us the proof. And what they're looking for are those stories. Here's the proof of Jessica's story and John's story and Austin's story and Dane's story. Oh, okay, now I see the proof.
And those listening right now, if you're not sharing your wins, your losses, your struggles, your impact, you're not doing it right. I know so many new nonprofits struggle with sharing that they're still struggling. Like, you haven't solved X mission yet. You haven't fed, you haven't ended world hunger. Your mission is still going. People know that you still have a mission, and they know that it takes time to build and provide impact and change this scenario. So saying that you're feeding 100 people is fantastic, but you should also say that you're doing good things feeding those 100, but you still have people to help. Because if you're meeting your mission and all you show is your wins, why would they contribute if you're just crushing it? They might want to get on board and throw you a couple of bucks, but if they know that you're working hard, you're meeting your mission, you're impacting lives, and then you need to highlight where you're still struggling. Yeah, I fed 100 people, it was great, but there was 150 people in line after that I had to say, we don't have enough for you today. And it's heartbreaking. And you need to share those stories and share the impact of what happens when you're there and contributing, and what happens if you're not there. What happens if you get the money today, the $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 or more, how that's going to impact what you're already doing, increase that benefit, how you're scaling up to help more people, and what it's going to look like if you don't get the funds.
So should we jump to the last piece?
I mean, why not? We only got one left. It was a quick 10. We got to hit 11 to make this a show.
Last one is elevator pitch and brief introduction. So I get a lot of questions, given that my expertise is developing clarity. Everybody's like, can you just help us develop our pitch? Like, that's all we need. Well, if you look at this diagram, and if you imagine it was more of an iceberg, the pitch in the intro is the tip of the iceberg. A lot of this other stuff below the blue is below the water. It's the stuff that people don't necessarily see. It's the things you got to deliver on. But if they just meet you in an elevator or going up a set of stairs to an event and say, hey, what do you do? You have to be clear on those other 10 elements to be able to really nail a pitch and brief introduction. So the pitch is the really engaging piece of, usually it's sharing purpose. Our goal is to end hunger in the school community of Wichita, or go bigger.
For the nonprofit architect, what I do for consulting, and they ask me, like, that's great, you have this podcast, but like, what do you do? I'm like, I help you get your next $30,000 in donations. How I do that is a whole other context, but having that one succinct line that I know what it is I deliver, and that I have a program to do that, people can understand and digest that. But it's important to know that just your founder isn't the only person saying this stuff. And if you're a founder listening to this and you're not clear on what you do, you cannot have your board members, your staff, your volunteers go out there with a wishy-washy, this is kind of what we do sort of like thing, because no one's interested in wishy-washy anything. If they can go, we deliver hot meals to the homeless downtown Oklahoma City. We're there consistently 3 times a week, and we're growing all the time. And if everyone in your organization can say that line, you then have a succinct mission. You have the brand story, the promise, the unique value propositions, and everything else that we've talked about today. You have those in alignment. You have that foundation built that's solid. You don't see the foundation of a house. You know it's there because the house hasn't split in half. But that foundation needs to be there. That clarity, that focus, that vision needs to be succinct, well-written, short, and to the point, to where everyone at any time can go on and say what it is that you do. And if you're not clear as the founder, you're not getting that donation, and people will forget you almost immediately.
I want to come back to your pitch because it's brilliant.
Hot seat again. Here we go.
No, I'm actually going to praise you. Here's why it's brilliant. Because it's written as a hook. So if you think of your elevator pitch as a headline on the ticker tape or on the news or on a newspaper that makes you like turn your head or go, hold on a minute, wait, tell me what? Tell me more? I help you raise your next $30,000. For your ideal clients, they're going to be like, oh, okay, so how do you do that? Tell me more, Travis. You want your pitch, that headline, to initiate a response and have people want to learn more. And then the intro that follows, pitch and brief intro, the brief intro is that, tell me more, Travis. So then you can dive into, it's a simple equation for your intro, culmination of you get to look. If you're clear on all the other elements we just talked about, all you have to do is go who we are, what we do, the value we deliver, with or for whom, and why. You take the synthesis of those 5 elements and roll them into a paragraph, perfect. And then again, everyone on your team is using a 3 to 4 line paragraph to explain what your organization does after somebody's like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Tell me more.
So you mentioned that you want to have this succinct paragraph where everyone needs to learn to be able to regurgitate. It can be a paragraph. It can be short. United Way, which is a massively impactful and helpful organization, their mission statement is improves lives by mobilizing the caring power of communities around the world to advance the common good. That's it. The United Way is considered one of the top nonprofit organizations every year. They do a fantastic job of exactly what their mission is. It doesn't have to be 3 or 4 sentences. It can be, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in order to be a big, impactful organization, it can be just one succinct line.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason we build out that brief intro, that usually becomes content for the website, content for brochures or proposals, applying for funding. You're going to need a bit more fodder. But the great thing is when you get clear on these pieces, and they're built for outside consumption. So that's one thing to keep in mind as you're writing these down is don't just get clear on them as a team. Think about, okay, now that we're clear on them as a team, we've got the right words are in play, like our unique dialect, the language we use. Hire a writer to polish them up for outside consumption, for use in all different things, so that when your proposal writer is going to apply for the next grant, you can hand them this guide, aka this Bible of 11 core strategic elements, fundamentals, and they can just pick and choose the ones that work to answer the questions. It's going to save you immense amount of time and you immense amount of money.
I think it's so important. I want to add testing, average person testing. Put out a mission statement, put it online, put it on social, be like, what does this mean to you? And people will tell you, be like, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. I'm not sure what this means. And my wife is fantastic at this. I'll put something out and she kind of means, she's like, what the heck are you trying to say? Oh, I'm trying to say this. She's like, well, how about you say that than the other thing you wrote? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, just because we understand as an organization, a group, a person, a company, a nonprofit, you understand all the work that went into. You were at all the behind the scenes meeting. You have the personal story, the personal connection, the personal drive, the personal everything else. But no one seeing your content knows any of that stuff. So you have to be able to boil it down to what you're really trying to say. And you don't need a whole lot of words. Some of those impactful Bible verses, most impactful speeches, most impactful stories are very short. They use one-syllable words. As long as your mission statement is clear, concise, and complete, you can execute all of this stuff that we talked about here. But if you're not clear, if you're not understanding where you're coming from or what you're trying to deliver, it doesn't matter what program you have. It doesn't matter how much funding you've got previously. People are not going to contribute to you because they don't trust that you're in alignment with what we're doing.
Coming back to that clarity piece and that understanding from the outside is I'll often say to my clients, okay, that's great, but talk to me like I'm 5.
Okay. All right. So I got to jump in here with a story. So I've been doing nuclear command and control most of my career. The nuclear strategic world is a very interesting, succinct place. What that means, being in the Navy, is I haven't spent a lot of time on ships. I just haven't. And I got a job or two where I went out and did operational level planning. And we were taking aircraft carriers, destroyers, patrol craft, dock landing ships for Marines, all sorts of different types of ships and surface Navy stuff, and employing them in the Middle East and in that theater. And as they're talking through this general Navy speak, I've essentially spent 18 years in the strategic nuclear world and have had nothing to do with ships. So as people are explaining me these new things, talk to me like I'm a kindergartner. Tell me in the most basic, easy words to understand what we're doing. Oh, we're moving this ship over to here. Okay, now what words did you use to describe that so I can be on the same page with you? So many times you hear acronyms or I call it techno-babble, industry-specific terminology. Like the music industry has different stuff than artists use, than plumbers use. Everyone has their own kind of different speak. But if we can boil down something like resistance in electric circuit to water flowing through a garden hose. If I tell a story about water flowing through a garden hose, everyone in the audience can understand what I'm talking about. But if I talk about the circuitry and volts, ohms, and amps and try to use that techno babble, not everyone's going to get the point. What the point is that test your stuff. Have someone that's going to be like, hey, man, that sounds dumb. Everyone's got that friend that's like, man, what the heck are you talking about? They're going to tell you to your face. They're going to be like, I don't understand. And when you get that level of our understanding to where anyone can understand what you're talking about, then you'll have something that not only your team, your volunteers, your staff, people you're delivering services to, and your donors can all understand. And that's what really matters.
Don't make your ideal target audiences have to go grab a dictionary.
We want to make it so easy that even college professors can understand the words that we're using. So easy a Marine can decipher what we're talking about. I'm picking on a couple of friends of mine that my audience has no idea who I'm talking about, and I apologize. But don't give them a reason to not support your mission. If you're unclear or you can't accept money in the way they prefer to deliver it to you, if you're creating roadblocks for them by not being clear, you're costing yourself donors. People are going to click on your site, get confused, and never come back to you. They're going to look at an invitation you sent and not understand what you're trying to mean, and they won't follow up. You're going to have an ask for a volunteer, and volunteers are going to show up, but you haven't planned out the roles and responsibilities and mission for the volunteers. They're not going to come back. If you don't have this stuff figured out before you're moving forward, you're going to lose energy, lose power, lose steam, and not be able to continue to deliver your services to your target audience, target mission, whatever it is that you're trying to do. It's not going to happen. You have to be clear. Karley, thank you so much for being on the show today. I love going through the 11 fundamental underpinnings. And it's maybe a little bit longer than normal, but 11 is a lot. And you got to have stories to go with those 11 things. Where can people find you? Where can people get a hold of you? And remind us what that website is where they can grab the Surefire audit tool to make sure their branding is succinct all the way through.
The best places to find me, BigBoldBrand.com. Social media, I tend to hang out the most on LinkedIn. So just search my name, Karley, with a K and an EY, and Cunningham, pretty much as it sounds.
Cunningham with a ham.
If you want to have a conversation, reach out. And we have the audit tool available for all of your listeners at BigBoldBrand.com/nonprofit architect. I want to address one thing that comes up when I workshop this is often, and for those that were furiously writing all the elements down and their heads are just about to explode, they're like, whoa, that's a lot. It is, and it will all come together. I can assure you. Start with the elements that are most getting in your way right now If communicating with your audiences is getting in the way, if you're not getting as many donations as you want, take a look at those target audiences. This is built in an intentional order, but my whole thing is let's get you some traction. So just start with what's getting in the way and then pick away at the rest.
Absolutely. Karley, thank you so much for being on the show today. I had a lot of fun, and frankly, a lot of fun every time I talk to you, not just on the podcast today. Looking forward to talking again, and I'll let you know when this thing goes live.
Likewise, Travis. Thanks so much.
You've been listening to The Nonprofit Architect. To listen to all our past shows, visit http://nonprofitarchitect.org. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Thank you.